Okay, YouTubers, this is the Angryprepper. Today's video, we're going to ask the question of what is really going on in Maui. Now, guys, clearly there's a lot of things being done in Maui and a lot of weird incidents and events that are happening there. And no one's really explaining it, so it's fueling the conspiracy theory to run rampant. So, of course, in this video, we're going to touch on some of those theories, and then we're going to talk about, or we're going to rationalize certain things, because I don't think everything is conspiracy, but I think a lot of things that are going on are very weird. And some things are probably not a conspiracy theory. It's actually factual, and they're trying to cover it up with bullshit. Now, as it stands, 114 people are currently dead. They state 850 plus people are missing, up to 1,100, which is a lot. Now, I think, and my theory on that is that a lot of the people who jumped into the ocean were swept out to sea, and that's it. Once you're swept out to sea, guys, your body doesn't really come back unless the current brings you back, and by that time, your body probably has already sunk. So if they're in the middle of the ocean, they'll never be found. That's the gist of it. So there's that, right? And then there are other people, like I stated before, that are probably fused to the ground or floor, and they're going to start finding these people over the next couple of weeks when they start doing debris removal. So they're going to find a lot of those people there, but I fear that a large majority of people are not going to be found because they were swept out to sea. Out of that large majority of people, there's supposedly talk of a large percentage of that being kids, or a fair percentage of that being kids still missing. The thing with kids, guys, is they're even harder to find because when bodies get burned, they shrink. And clearly there's a difference between a child and an adult. That is true. But they do shrink, so that they become harder to find in a sense if they died in those homes. Especially with things collapsing on them, they're going to be a lot harder to find. So hopefully that's not true, but the talk right now is that there are missing a lot of kids. Many of those people also died in their cars. But the thing with cars is that you can look through a lot of them, just look in, and you'll see a body in there. But they said a lot of people also died in their cars trying to escape the fire. That was, of course, going to happen. I just don't, I don't know. There's one road out and in Lahaina. So that's the other part of this whole thing. That's another problem. Like anywhere you drive into, people are like, this is safe. There's only one road in, one road out. You're like, or vice versa, what I do with my hands. You're like, all right, that's cool. But when a situation like this happens, that one road in, one road out becomes a major issue because everybody bottlenecks to get out of that area, whatever area is infected. So, of course, guys, a lot of weird things going on, and people are not talking about it, and they are not addressing it in the media. Certain media outlets are addressing it, but then no one else is. No one else is raising the questions of the 5 lights in the sky, or 8 lights, or whatever it was, far in the skies that were moving in sync with one another, almost like they were satellites. No one's addressing the fact that a lot of the land burned, except for the rich people's homes in that area. Seems like the poor area or poorer areas were affected by this fire, and it stopped at the mansions. That's another weird thing. I saw a picture on, I was like, oh, that's pretty fucking interesting that it stopped like right as it got to the homes. So clearly, guys, a lot of weird things. Now, I'm not saying the fire could have burned itself out before it got to the home. That's always a possibility. The lights in the sky, guys, could have been anything. But we're seeing these weird things happen just too close together. If you space them out, people don't realize it. They're like, oh, okay, that happened. Coincidence. But when they happen close together, and they're happening closer together, things stop being a coincidence. Now, how it started, apparently the power company didn't shut power off when the storm was coming in. And then they had a tree hit an electrical line, power line, and you could see the spark in the woods, and then you could see the fire started. Now, people go, oh, the video. They showed this one video, and they're like, oh, well, that's where the fire started. Again, here comes the bullshit. The fire started in 4 separate areas of Maui. So if it started in 4 separate areas, but they're trying to use this one video as the catalyst that started the whole thing, again, that's the bullshit. That's where we see the bullshit, because the fire, guys, a fire that big, that grew that fast, not that it's impossible, because it's not impossible. It can happen. But the fire services were already on it and moving. They were moving at a pretty fast pace. Now, we're going to talk about the weird things that started happening, like right after the fire started and after the fire was done with. The power company is starting to be blamed for this, and they're starting to throw them under the bus. And I have this feeling, guys, that because it's a private-run power company, that maybe blaming them and having lawsuits against them will put them out of business, or have their rights given to, or have the state take the rights from them, so that the state owns those rights for the power company, so that they can do their green initiative a lot easier. The whole green initiative thing, guys, believe it or not, they fight with power companies and vice versa. Some power companies are on board, and other power companies like, no, this is bullshit, because they have their own agenda. The power companies, that is, right? They make money on another aspect. The green initiative is to get rid of them and or convert them into solar power companies, which a lot of those places don't want to do. Now, this specific company, I don't know if they do solar as well. Nonetheless, guys, they keep throwing them under the bus when there are other questions to be asked as to why the fire started in 4 separate areas. It's not like 4 lines went down and then it started to fire and then it moved that quick. Now, granted, the wind is going to move fire a lot faster. That is without a doubt. So you had that going for you. The problem with that wind is that it was supposedly hurricane-forced winds from a hurricane that was 800 miles away. Highly unlikely. But I'm not a meteorologist. So, of course, they're going to come up with some new term about delayed hurricane winds, or some crazy shit that they're going to come up with just to make people feel more comfortable about the weirdness of a hurricane that was 800 miles away, and then they had hurricane-sustained winds in Maui. Now, supposedly what I'm hearing is that Maui was the only island that was experiencing this. Again, that's another weird thing. So, the lights in the sky, guys, was hovering over Hawaii. If I'm not mistaken, it was 8 to 12, not 5. 8 to 12 lights moving in sync like satellites. And a guy on Instagram named Shervin333 filmed this. He films the lights in the skies hanging out, and he's like, "What is that? Is that a satellite? Why are they moving in sync?" And you can see the roll lights moving in sync. So again, guys, that's weird in itself. Now, could that be satellites taking pictures? Could be. Could that be the direct energy weapon that we theorized that could have went off? Could have been. Though, again, you guys know my stance on the direct energy weapon. I don't think that was so. Still, I think this was done man-made, meaning someone actually lit these things, because, interestingly enough, guys, just a couple months, if not a year ago, Lahaina was in a court battle over realtors and developers building high-rises and new businesses in their historic town of Lahaina. They didn't want this. They go to court. They win. Lahaina wins. And all of a sudden, this fire rips through the same area they wanted to build high-rises and new business in. Again, that is weirdness number, 2? Weirdness number 3, I guess, is the alert system. Emergency alert system, guys, didn't go off. No one thought to go, yo, let's set this off. Let's give people some time and a chance to respond. With that, the emergency service chief, their emergency management chief, states that, oh, I don't regret not setting it off because it wouldn't have saved anybody. That was his reasoning. His reason, it wouldn't have saved anybody. When someone gives you a bullshit excuse like that, instead of just saying, listen, I'm sorry, I apologize, I should have did it, I don't know what I was thinking, which there is no apology for it, because as an emergency management chief or any kind of emergency management person, you're thinking, let's set this off. To boot, maybe the people who were working under him should have been like, fuck this dude, we're going to set it off on our own and give people the warnings over their phone. You can, over the phone and text message, tell people, fire in Lahaina, evacuate immediately, and evacuate east, right? If the fire is coming from the west, or wherever direction the fire was coming from, tell them to evacuate in that way, opposite of the fire. It's that easy. I mean, it doesn't take rocket science, and yet this guy didn't want to alert the emergency system because he didn't think it was going to save them. His reasoning for it was because he said, and I quote, this is mainly for tsunamis, if we would have set this off, I'm paraphrasing as well, so it's not quote, if we would have set this off, they would have ran for the hills towards the fire. So now he's calling Hawaiians stupid. Because if you sound the alarm and people come out and they see this fire, they're like, all right, we can't go there. Let's go this way. But thinking that they're going to have an automatic response, that they hear the tsunami warnings and then head for the hills. Clearly the hills are burning, so you're not headed in that direction. So that chief, if you will, he resigned for health reasons. He actually resigned because he was getting his balls broken for being a fucking asshole, for giving a fucking excuse about, oh, they would have head for the hills. It wouldn't have saved anybody. I don't regret doing this. That's where you go to this guy's home and you regret him making that statement. Just saying. A fucking blanket and a bars of soap, it'll fucking even everything out for him. So another weird thing, the hydrants weren't working before the power went out. Before it was shut down or it went out. They said that they wanted to keep the power on so that the hydrants would work. Because you need power to run hydrant water, have it pump uphill. Right? So in that island, if you will, that's how the system works. So it has to pump uphill so that they can get water to put fire out wherever that fire is on those hills. Whether it's a forest, a wildfire, or a home. They weren't working before that. They were having water issues before the power went out. Why weren't the hydrants working? And they're asking this question, but of course no one's answering, because why would they? The hydrants went out in the area they needed it to go out so that the fire could do its thing. Burn people out of house and home so that these realtors can come in, because I undoubtedly know or see realtors and developers coming in and developing this land and trying to do it as a charity, but it's not. There's always a fucking snake behind the hand. Right? The hand is extended to you to be like, hey, we're going to here to help you. And then here comes the fucking snake wrapping its fucking self around you and strangling you out so that you can give up that land. One thing or the other is going to happen, guys. The governor of Hawaii, Josh Green, is going to implement another executive order to designate that land for public use. Because public use, guys, means that it's not what you think it is. It's not what they're going to turn into a playground or a forest or something like that. Public use just means that now they can use it for public use, meaning he can give it away to who he wants, as long as there is public access. So if a realtor wants to come in and, let's just say, I don't know, develop a park, but with that park, they're going to build some buildings, because this is public use park, but we need some buildings to go along with it to make it look good. Now, I'm simplifying it a little more simpler than that. It's a little more complex, but it's a land grab. It's just another term for land grab when public use is used for land that's taken by the governor. And he had, early this year and last year, signed a bunch of executive orders making a lot of land public use. You can look this up yourself, but that land is soon going to be sold and or made into some kind of green city or green town. So the governor is currently, or stated, that he's going to put a ban on any sales of land or any buying of land in that area. Obviously, he didn't say the rest of Hawaii, but he said in that area. This is what he said. Now, he could do that, again, do the land grab and make it an executive order public use bullshit, take it for himself. Then he can sell it and make money on it. Obviously, he doesn't want the private citizens doing this. That's my theory. My theory is that that's why he's trying to look like the good guy and sit there and go, well, we're going to ban sales and we're going to ban buying, purchases. But if I make an executive order, turn this into a public use land, he's not buying anything. He's not selling anything. Then in a year or so, he can sell it to the highest bidder. Again, that's my theory. I'm probably overshooting that one. Now, another weird thing that's going on is that realtors and developers are already calling, and apparently still calling, people who were affected by the fire to sell their land, to sell their homes. At the time they started calling, fires weren't out yet. They were still burning, pocket fires, still burning. Now they're sitting there ramping it up, and they're calling more to see if they can reach out to people who are going to sell. Now, when you are, guys, in a situation like this, for the most part, and you are down and out, and you're like, oh man, this is bullshit, I don't know what we're going to do, how we're going to rebuild, and someone comes in with an olive branch, in your desperate time, you're going to take that olive branch and sell your land. And all they need, guys, is one or two people to sell. They don't need everyone to sell, at least not yet. one or two people to sell smack dab in the middle of the neighborhood and start building obnoxious shit, forcing people out. That's how realtors work. That's how developers work. Sorry. Developers are slimy, scumbag pieces of shit. And they will do such a thing as starting in the middle of that town and or village or city and start expanding from there. That's something to watch out for, because I can absolutely see them doing this starting in another couple of years. They're not going to do it immediately, but they're definitely going to start within the next 2 to 3 years. Now, another thing, the people of Lahaina were getting $1.4 million from the government. That's $700 per household, right? Per household. Keep in mind, the Ukraine has received almost $200 billion. Ukraine, another country. Hawaiians, Americans, not receiving a fair amount of money, $700 per household. Now, there's a big issue with that, and of course, the Biden administration is ignoring it. They're just like, well, like it doesn't exist. Keep in mind, when people bring up, you gave $200 billion to the Ukraine, and just 3 days after the Hawaiian fire, or while the Hawaiian fire is going on, Biden requests for another $25 billion to be sent to the Ukraine. So that puts him over $200 billion. Right? The number as of right now is $196 billion that was given to the Ukraine. With him requesting that $25 billion extra to be sent there, that puts him over $200 billion. But Hawaiians are only getting $700 per household. Go figure that. Now, I know a lot of you saw this article, and some of you guys are like, well, at least they're doing something. The Spam food company, I have to say this. But Spam, guys, we all know is shit food. It's shit meat. It's the worst meat you could possibly eat. It has no nutritional value. It's only there to give you a heart attack and expand your fucking heart and your brain from the inflammation you get from eating this shit. Some people are like, well, Hawaiians are not getting sick. But Hawaiians also have a healthier diet. Spam is probably the only bad food they eat. The Spam company giving Hawaiians Spam is the equivalent of Biden giving them $700. It is shit food. And when Spam, guys, which is shit food, is super fucking cheap, it costs nothing to give them that. That is not food that you give people who are struggling. But because Hawaiians love it, and they do their little hulas around it, doesn't fucking mean anything. It's shit. It's always been shit. I'd break balls about not liking Spam, but I don't like Spam for a specific reason. It is not healthy. It's one of the least healthiest things you can eat, especially during the end of the world or shit hits the fan scenario. You do not want to be eating Spam as your sole source of food. If it's a backup food or if you have a couple cans, fine. But if you're only eating Spam because you love it that much, you are undoubtedly going to die from high blood pressure or high sodium, high salt, and probably high cholesterol. That is not some shit you want to eat. Spam is more like a treat. It's not something you should live off of. And of course, people are, Hawaiians love Spam. They love Spam because they were given that shit meat. Like the Native Americans given bullshit trinkets so that they could sell their land. Or had their land bought from them with trinkets. It's the same shit. It's why Hawaiians eat it, because it was cheap shit meat. Why do you think the military was given it? Because it was cheap shit meat. It's not good. It's not, at least they were doing something. Fuck then. I can send them parts of dogs and cats. I'm doing something. It's food. Right? No, we don't do that here. So we shouldn't be giving these people who are down and out shit food and then patting Spam on the back. And I know some of you are going to say, well, they did more than Biden. Probably. Or they did the same as Biden. They treated fucking people of lesser, in their eyes of lesser value, giving them shit meat and $700. They're dancing with Spam and fanning themselves cool with fucking $700. It's a shit deal, guys, no matter how the fuck you look at it. So, of course, there's a new term called fire hurricane. I never heard of this term before. A couple of people said they have, I guess. They created a new term, fire hurricane, guys. That means we're going to start seeing it more. That's all it means. When they come up with these new terms, that means we're going to see it a hell of a lot more. Like again, Hawaii's never seen anything this big in their entire life. At least in recorded history, they haven't seen anything like this. And now you got a new term called fire hurricane. That just means that we're going to see more of these fire hurricanes all over the United States, or probably up the East Coast and the West Coast. I mean, Hurricane Hillary hit California. They hadn't seen anything like that in 84, 85 years. That's a little weird. And I just think that that's weird considering that we had this big fire on Maui. We have a hurricane that they hadn't seen in 80-something years go up the West Coast. Then we have this fire out in Wharton Forest that's out in New Jersey. Canada is burning as well again, right? So all of these things are happening at once, and then there are major floods overseas. That's some crazy shit that's going on in Spain, and I forgot where else. Yeah, guys, I think that all of these things that are happening, some of them could be coincidence, some of them could be planned. Either way, guys, we got to be prepared for how much worse this is probably going to get. And if it does get worse, just be ready. Be squared away, have your shit stored and ready to rock and roll in case you need to use it. Because it looks like, guys, we're going to be using our preps real soon. And even if we have to use our preps, guys, who gives a fuck? We'll be ready. Anyway, guys, this is the Angry Prepper. Thank you for watching.